Okay. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to you all. And I would like to extend a particularly warm welcome to today's keynote speaker, Ambassador Ahmet Özümcü. My name is Markus Becker. I am the science editor of Spiegel Online, the news website of Der Spiegel magazine in Germany, and I'm pleased to be the host of this session. Before Ambassador Özümcü delivers his keynote, followed by questions from the audience, please allow me some opening remarks. August 21, 2013 was a black day for Syria and for mankind as a whole. In the early morning of that day, the eastern outskirts of Damascus were hit by shells containing sarin, a deadly nerve agent. The effect was devastating. Hundreds of civilians died, and I'm sure you all remember the heart-rending photos of dozens of little children who died in agony. However, the tragedy had encouraging consequences. The international community was quick to condemn the attack. The United Nations imposed on Syria a timeline for the destruction of its chemical weapons, one of the world's largest stockpiles of these truly vicious weapons. It was a historical moment. Never before had the international community forced a warring country to surrender a whole arsenal of weapons of mass destruction, let alone in such a short amount of time. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons suddenly found itself on the center stage of international politics. Until then, the OPCW had done its valuable work largely outside of the general public's attention. Now, the organization was given a mission which was ambitious to say the least. An estimated 1,000 tons of sulfur, mustard, and chemical agents for the production of nerve agents were to be destroyed, along with Syria's chemical weapons production facilities. And all this within less than 9 months. But success seems imminent. Only 2 days ago, Ahmet Özümcü, the OPCW's Director General, declared that the last of Syria's chemicals had left the country and are on the way to being destroyed. Ambassador Özümcü assumed the office of Director General of the OPCW in 2009. Under his leadership, the organization continued to be remarkably successful. In 1997, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the international treaty outlawing chemical weapons, entered into force, and the OPCW was founded. Since then, 190 nations have joined the OPCW. Originally, these member states declared 72,531 metric tons of chemical agents. By September 2013, more than 58,000 tons of these, equaling more than 80%, had been destroyed under the supervision of the OPCW. As a consequence, the OPCW was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2013. According to the Nobel Committee, the OPCW, with the Chemical Weapons Convention, had defined the use of chemical weapons as a taboo under international law. However, much remains to be done. And so let us hope that the OPCW continues to be as successful as it has been so far. And now, without further ado, I give the floor to Ambassador Özümcü.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to address the Euroscience Open Forum, an event which brings together scientists, policymakers, and entrepreneurs in an international setting to stimulate innovation and research across diverse disciplines. At the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, we have sought to follow a similar approach by closely cooperating with a large number of stakeholders of diverse origin in the implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention. International cooperation has been key to our mission to rid the world of chemical weapons. This cooperation goes well beyond traditional multilateral diplomacy for a very simple reason. Advances in science and technology and their impact on security drive our work. The emergence of a globalized, interconnected, and interdependent world is both an encouraging and sometimes daunting prospect. Armed conflicts, natural disasters, economic crises can often lead us to pessimism, but we must not lose sight of human progress in general, especially in science and technology. Chemistry in particular has had a transforming and positive influence. It has contributed immensely to raising the quality of life and explaining the deep mysteries of our existence. Its scope for bringing sustainable progress and prosperity remains unbounded. Nonetheless, whilst as a global civilization we have reached great heights of scientific accomplishment, we have also acquired the means to self-destruct. The ability of science to invent ever more destructive weapons and technologies poses grave dangers. One key lesson of the 20th century is that progress in law and ethics must keep pace with advancements in science, and that our survival depends on upholding universal values as opposed to purely national interests. The Charter of the United Nations codified the rules for interstate conduct and established the principles for promoting peace and security in conditions of equality, justice, and human dignity. The right of human beings to live in conditions of peace and security is fundamental. It is also universal. When destruction threatens on a mass scale, weapons of mass destruction are the enemy. Therefore, a consensus is needed to ensure that the world could be made free from them. We should welcome that the international community has succeeded in establishing comprehensive prohibitions on both biological and chemical weapons. The effort to obtain a global ban on chemical weapons took longer than other weapons of mass destruction. But despite this later start, the Chemical Weapons Convention has recorded unique success in the history of multilateral disarmament. Since entering into force in 1997, it remains the only international disarmament treaty to ban an entire class of weapons of mass destruction under international verification. And it is the only treaty that is within close reach of achieving this objective. In my remarks here, I intend to account for this success in terms of the partnerships that the Convention and the OPCW, as its implementing body, have been able to cement with scientists. In doing so, I hope to show how these partnerships have not only moved and continue to move science and technology away from misuse. I will also try to show how they have charted new directions for science in the active service of durable international peace and security. Since the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last year, many people have asked me how the success of disarmament can be measured. My response to this is that for disarmament to be truly effective, it must do more than simply remove weapons, and it must ensure that they are not reacquired. And to do this, it must provide strong incentives, not just disincentives. The Chemical Weapons Convention was negotiated to encompass precisely such a comprehensive regime, a regime that spans 4 mutually supportive pillars. These relate to the destruction of existing chemical weapons, prevention of new weapons from emerging, provision of assistance with treaty implementation and protection against chemical attacks, and finally, promotion of international cooperation on peaceful uses of chemistry. Vital groundwork to ensure such a broad scope was laid by scientists from East and West through the Pugwash Conference on Science and World Affairs and the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI. And from the outset of negotiations in the 1970s, scientists played a seminal role in laying the foundations of what was to become the Chemical Weapons Convention. At the most fundamental level, scientists helped us create a baseline for distinguishing between malevolent and benevolent use of chemistry and related technologies. Their work determined the definition of chemical weapons and established the elements of a credible verification regime. This work was and continues to be complex, because what we are often dealing with are materials and technologies that have multiple uses. They can render great benefits for human and economic development, but they can also render great harm if misused. This work goes to the very core of what makes the Convention unique among international disarmament treaties, for it is the Convention's provisions for holding member states to their obligations through monitoring and verification activities that makes it so effective. All member states must open their relevant chemical industrial plants to inspection by the OPCW to ensure production for exclusively peaceful purposes. And those few member states with chemical weapons must destroy them under OPCW verification. But the technical aspects of verification are far from providing the complete picture. Scientific knowledge and advice informs our work across all four pillars of the Convention, and they do so in a way that underwrites the integrity of the regime that the Convention represents. In other words, this is not just a case of working to prevent misuse of materials and technologies. It's about using scientific knowledge to assist our work across the range of activities we undertake. In disarmament, in non-proliferation, in assistance and protection, and in international cooperation on peaceful uses. In the 17 years since the Convention entered into force, the OPCW has verified the destruction of some 83% of chemical weapons declared by 8 of our 190 member states. 3 of these countries, Albania, India, and another state party requesting anonymity, have completed the destruction of their stockpiles. Libya most recently did likewise, with only some component chemicals left to be eliminated. And Iraq is proceeding with a plan to destroy remnants of chemical weapons. The 2 major possessor states, Russia and the United States of America, are well on track to achieving their destruction targets in accordance with a revised decision adopted by our member states in 2011. And destruction of Syrian chemical weapons can get fully underway now that the last chemicals have been removed from Syria. What all this shows is that global zero for chemical weapons is by no means a distant prospect. It is a reality that is now within our grasp. What this also shows is that just as chemistry and engineering can be used to create these weapons, these disciplines are also serving to destroy them. To this end, we have seen remarkable innovation at work in mounting tried and tested technology on board a US vessel, Cape Ray, for destroying the most dangerous Syrian chemicals through a process of hydrolysis, breaking down chemical agents with hot water and a caustic compound. During the elimination of the Syrian chemical weapons program, in case of some sites which were inaccessible due to security reasons, our experts have used some innovative modern technological means to verify the removal and destruction activities. Science and technology also play an especially important role in guarding against the re-emergence of chemical weapons in any guise. In the first instance, this means maintaining an ability to detect the presence of chemical warfare agents through effective sample collection and analytical methods. OPCW experts were recently run through their paces in this respect through the vital support they provided to the UN investigation into allegations of use of chemical weapons in Syria. On the basis of analysis conducted at the OPC-designated laboratories of biomedical and environmental samples, the mission's report confirmed the use of the deadly nerve agent sarin in the Damascus suburb of Ghouta last year in August. This finding precipitated strong international condemnation and was a decisive factor in rallying the collective international effort to eliminate Syrian chemical weapons in the wake of Syria's decision to join the Convention. A more complex set of non-proliferation problems relates to building capabilities to meet new and emerging challenges in the form of new types of chemicals and technologies, as well as other relevant scientific advances. Many of you, as scientists, welcome with awe and wonder the fact that some 15,000 new chemicals are added to the chemical abstracts database every day, and some 2 million gene sequences to the genetic databases. For their part, policymakers are often less delighted seeing in this flowering of knowledge potential proliferation challenges. But scientists and policymakers are working together, notably through the OPCW Scientific Advisory Board, a board composed of 25 eminent experts from different parts of the world, to keep abreast of these developments and to understand how we can better use them for fulfilling our mandates. In this way, the independent scientific advice we source through the board acts as an early warning system. It allows us to recognize where new developments could have an impact on implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention. We cannot, of course, hope to control every new chemical, nor should we try to. Accordingly, it is imperative that our work strikes as informed a balance as possible between prevention and promotion in relation to applications that have malevolent and beneficial uses. From the very earliest days of chemical warfare during the First World War, there has been a constant struggle between the application of science for offensive and defensive purposes. Within weeks of the first use of chemical weapons, rudimentary protective masks were being sent to the troops. These days, things are no different, except that the Chemical Weapons Convention provides a collaborative regime for securing assistance and protection for its member states in response to chemical attacks. The OPCW works very closely with its member states to develop the capacity and expertise to manage and mitigate the use or threat of use of chemical weapons. This is achieved through a comprehensive program of training and capacity building for first responders and other relevant agencies in state parties. This training program emphasizes the importance of regional cooperation and the exchange of skills and expertise among practitioners. The benefit of this approach is that the skills and capacities developed to counter a chemical weapons threat are equally applicable in dealing with industrial accidents or other disaster scenarios involving toxic chemicals. Developing protective measures against exposure to chemical weapons is an area in which the positive application of advances in science and technology are very much in evidence. This is the case in the life sciences, which provide opportunities for developing better medical countermeasures for those affected by exposure to hazardous chemicals, as well as treatment for the longer-term effects of such exposure. It's worth mentioning here also the dual-use characteristics of some of the chemical substances we are dealing with. We know, for example, that nerve agents work by inhibiting a key enzyme that allows our organs and muscles to relax. They effectively make the body go into overdrive with high exposure, leading to death through respiratory failure. Yet, some drugs for Alzheimer's disease do the very same thing, using the same chemical compounds. In therapeutically effective doses, they can keep a chemical used to send messages between nerve cells working for longer. This can improve signaling to the brain, temporarily reducing symptoms of the disease. Protection and emergency response is nonetheless about more than medical countermeasures. Advances in materials science and nanotechnology have allowed us to greatly improve protective equipment, thus ensuring the health and safety of those who are exposed to chemicals, both in response to chemical attacks as well as accidents. Finally, the OPCW works closely with scientists and industry around the world to promote peaceful uses of chemistry. Under the auspices of a range of programs, we hold workshops and exchanges designed to enhance capacity and the quality of laboratory work. We also support internships for young scientists and engineers, provide opportunities for academics and practitioners to attend conferences, and facilitate a program to make used but still usable equipment available to laboratories with an identified need. The overwhelming focus of this work is on countries with developing economies and economies in transition. The principle that informs this work is twofold. Firstly, that durable security must be based on equitable access to scientific knowledge and technical know-how, and secondly, that all state parties must have at least a basic capacity to implement the Convention from a scientific and technical perspective. These are vital assets also for helping to underwrite our member states' engagement on our common purpose, as well as their prosperity. Scientific collaboration is especially well placed in this regard, since science knows no geographical boundaries. It is accordingly an excellent vehicle for enhancing dialogue and building trust between nations, as this forum is only too aware. In all of this, we need to remind ourselves that effective collaboration between scientists and policymakers was never a given. While it was not hard to make common purpose with noble objectives of the Chemical Weapons Convention, developing habits of consultation did require us to make some adjustments. Over the years, increased interaction between scientists and non-scientists in policymaking circles has helped scientists make their advice more widely understood among all key stakeholders, including foreign ministry officials, legal experts, and customs officers who may have limited scientific knowledge. This is vital for the simple reason that full confidence in disarmament and arms control measures can only be built on transparency and sound verification methodology closely informed by science. At the same time, such a top-down approach from our scientific elites, working closely within and with governments, will also require bottom-up reinforcement. We need to instill the highest ethical standards in our scientists at the very beginning of their careers, especially those with access to substances and facilities which could be misused. To this end, the OPCW, with the cooperation of member states, will be unveiling tools and materials for awareness raising, education and outreach purposes, some of which are already available on the OPCW website. As I have said on past occasions, our purpose is not only to nurture more ethical scientists, but also more capable, rounded, and responsible ones. It's especially important for young scientists to develop a worldview from the very beginning of their careers. However specialized their current and future work might be, they should be able to contextualize its broader purpose and applications in order to serve it responsibly. This will be a key priority for us over the coming months and years, capitalizing on the OPCW's enhanced public profile owing to the Syria mission and award of the Nobel Peace Prize. To help achieve this purpose, we very much rely on those among you who act as mentors for the current and emerging generation of scientists. My own optimism about the future of chemical disarmament as a comprehensive, holistic enterprise draws much inspiration from what our partnerships with science have been able to achieve. Because the challenges we face through increased access to new advances in science and technology also conceal many opportunities. Opportunities which help us further shift scientific endeavor towards an ever more active role in enhancing our security as well as our prosperity. This means not only accommodating a more prominent role for science in multilateral disarmament and non-proliferation efforts, it will also require scientists to make their work better understood by more people, as well as all of us to become more science literate. For all of us, scientists and non-scientists alike, are stakeholders in global peace and security. And all of us must take responsibility in this vital and noble enterprise. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your very interesting words. So, the ultimate goal of the Chemical Weapons Convention is to rid the world of chemical weapons. What, in your mind, are the greatest hurdles to achieving this goal?
What are
What are the greatest hurdles, to achieving
hurdles?
this goal?
Actually, most of the hurdles, in fact, have been removed over the past 17 years during the implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention, and the progress has been significant. As I said, 83% of the existing stockpiles has been destroyed. But the challenge is, in fact, to ensure the full universality of the convention. At the moment, with the current membership of 190 states parties, we are able to ensure and to cover 98%, in fact, of chemical activities worldwide. But there are still 6 countries which are not member to the OPCW and not party to the convention. And we don't know whether they possess chemical weapons or whether they have an active chemical weapons program. We will only know when they decide to join the convention, and we hope that they will do it soon. So we are actively pursuing this goal of full universality, and will do so in the coming years. And secondly, there have been delays in the destruction of chemical weapons, and the deadline, in fact, which was set out by the convention was 29th April 2012. The deadline was missed due to mainly technical reasons, but also financial reasons in major possessor states. And now I'm very pleased to see that the progress has become more steady. We expect that the Russian Federation, in fact, will complete the destruction of most of its chemical weapons stockpile by the end of next year. There are at the moment 5 facilities which are destroying, and 4 of them will be completing soon, and one of them may take a little longer, maybe 2 more years. In the United States, we expect that the 2 facilities which are being built now will become operational soon, one of them next year, the other one a little later. But the United States has reached the level of 90%, and I expect that the remaining 10% will be destroyed in the coming years, and hopefully soon. So the prospects are quite promising, and we can declare, hopefully, within the next 4 to 5 years, that the world is free of chemical weapons. In fact, this is the motto of our organization, which is working together for a world free of chemical weapons, and I hope that we'll be able to reach that goal.
In dealing with the states who possess chemical weapons, is the OPCW exclusively dependent on the cooperation of the states? And what if they don't cooperate? What means do we have?
The regime, when it was negotiated, and it took about 20 years to negotiate this convention in Geneva at the Conference on Disarmament, and in fact, the participation of several stakeholders was ensured: scientific community, chemical industry, of course, governments, but civil society as well. And in the end, the product was quite good. A convention of 24 articles, but with a very large verification annex, which in fact lays ground for our verification mechanisms to be effective. But the whole system regime was in fact founded on the declaration to be made by states parties and their cooperation. So far, these declarations mechanism have worked quite well. We have a special unit to verify the accuracy of declarations. They have to declare not only the stockpiles of chemical weapons if they have, but they have also to declare those chemical industrial plants which produce dual-use chemical materials, and they have to declare their exports, imports, and our job is in fact to verify the accuracy of those declarations from different sources, and also on-site inspections in industrial plants. But if they fail to declare accurately and timely manner, we have other mechanisms, like the challenge inspection mechanism, which provides us, in fact, the possibility to go and verify in a very short notice, within 24 hours, whether some activities which are going beyond or prohibited by the convention. Therefore, this mechanism is there. It was never used so far, and I assume that state parties didn't feel the need. But every member country has the right, in fact, to call upon the Director General, myself, to carry out such an inspection if they have some suspicions of non-compliance.
Syria was literally forced to give up its chemical arsenal. Would you say that the OPCW's position was strengthened by that, or will it remain a singular event?
I think Syria's membership to the OPCW and joining the Chemical Weapons Convention was a very important, in fact, development in the history of our organization, because this was a possessive state, and we knew that, in fact, the existence of the chemical weapons stockpile in this country would pose some security risks for the Syrian people, as well as for the security of the region. And that's why, in fact, we have been preparing ourselves for different scenarios which could occur, either for the destruction of those weapons or a possible investigation of alleged use and so on. That's why we were able, in fact, to act within swiftly when such claims were raised. And I think, in fact, the regime of the Chemical Weapons Convention has been strengthened, and also it's a unique, in fact, unprecedented, development in the history of disarmament and arms control that the international community was able to act in a united way, and with the participation and support of so many countries, to remove and destroy considerable arsenal of weapons of mass destruction within such a short time. So within 9 months, all of those chemical weapons have been removed outside of the country. So in your introductory remarks, you mentioned that the last shipment took place 2 days ago, which I welcome. Still, there is some work to be done, and I'm sure we will be able to complete them soon.
I'm sure that there are many interesting questions from the audience, so right now I'm opening the floor. Please.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Ambassador Uzumci, first of all, I would like to say that what you showed us for your organization and yourself awarding of Nobel Peace Prize is really something which means a big achievement, but behind that there is in the history the quickest reply of one organization to use of the weapon on mass destruction. Could you tell us a little bit in some more details, diplomatical, political, and the other efforts which were done to carry such a successful action? That is one part of the question. And second, could these experiences and that approach could be applied also for nuclear disarmament? That's all. Thanks.
Yes, as I said, the negotiation of this convention comprehensive instrument took some time, but indeed there were several attempts in the past. For instance, the first attempt to prohibit the use of poison was in 1899 during the Hague Conference and Hague Convention, which failed. In fact, during the First World War, the chemical weapons were massively used. And another attempt was in 1925 with the Geneva Protocol, which prohibited the use, but didn't prohibit the development, production, and stockpiling of chemical weapons. And during the Second World War, it wasn't used, but just after that, during the first years of the Cold War, they were quite largely manufactured, especially in the Soviet Union and the then Soviet Union and the United States, and some other countries. So building on this history, the international community, in fact, has finally decided to get rid of them for several reasons. Clearly, these were considered as weapons of mass destruction, affecting indiscriminately combatants and non-combatants. But also, by time, these weapons have become less effective than before in the warfare because of protective instruments, equipment, and so on. And there were more sophisticated conventional weapons, which were even more decisive. In all this, due to all these factors, in fact, as well as the attacks during the Iran-Iraq War in 1987-88, which demonstrated once again the horrific, results of the use of chemical weapons. And these unfortunate incidents, in fact, have become a catalyst to accelerate the negotiations in Geneva. And then they concluded with this convention in 1992, opened into signature of states parties, and then in 93 and entered into force in 97. This organization, in fact, has three main organs. One is the technical secretariat, composed of nearly 500 experts. 125 of them are inspectors of different backgrounds, so analytical chemists, munition specialists, ex-military, and others. Also physicians, health and safety experts. And the rest are other experts or support staff. I have one deputy, 9 directors, and we have an executive council which is composed of 41 members coming from 5 different regional groups, and the membership rotates and every 2 years, in fact. And this is the main body for decision making, and we have an annual conference at the end of the year, which is the highest organ, which brings together all states parties. And we have also 5 yearly review conferences. So all this structure, in fact, is quite well established, and I think it's mature. It's proved its maturity, in fact, in several instances. We have been able to take decisions by consensus, which is rare, but always more effective, because this reflects, in fact, the positions of the whole membership, and the implementation of such decisions, in fact, is much more effective, efficient. And the organization, with a few exceptions, has been able to take decisions over the past 17 years by consensus. So all this to show that this regime does function in quite an efficient way. And over the past 17 years also, we were able to forge good partnerships with scientific communities and chemical industry, civil society, and so on. They participate in our events. We organize, in fact, several workshops during the year. In different regions, we want to ensure a regional distribution also in our events, as well as in their participation.
Okay, next question, and could you please state your name and affiliation too? Thank you.
Dr. Osman from Middle East Technical University. My concern and my question is about the scientific aspects of weapons of mass destruction. Now, we reached at a state where someone with the right expertise and the right knowledge can develop very powerful things in very small locations. So he or she doesn't need any kind of government aid or help to develop those weapons. So I'm wondering whether is there any way we can protect ourselves from people with such expertise but bad intentions. Thank you.
Yeah. Before I answer the question, actually, there was another question, actually, sorry, whether the experience of the Chemical Weapons Convention could be used elsewhere. I think I should point out that, that there are several experts, observers, who think that especially the verification mechanism in the CWC regime could be emulated, for instance, for a prospective nuclear disarmament, multilateral nuclear disarmament framework. We have at the moment, in fact, some cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency at the technical level. We share our experience and best practices with them, and they do so. I think if one day, I hope soon, the multilateral nuclear disarmament initiative is undertaken, the OPCW could clearly share its experience, and which might be useful, in fact, to pursue the goals of global zero in the field of nuclear disarmament. I'm very pleased to see that there is more, in fact, talk about this, even by the nuclear powers, and let's hope that it's going to happen one day. But clearly, there is quite a strong basis to be actually emulated. As to the misuse of chemistry by some individuals or groups of individuals, in fact, in 1995, in Japan, Tokyo, we have seen a cult, Shinrikyo, producing sarin in a very elementary way, in a very small scale, but they used it in a subway, and they killed, in fact, 13 people and injured several hundred. So this was a very, striking example of misuse of chemistry for terrorist purposes. And this risk, in fact, is very much in the minds of our state parties and their governments, and the chemical terrorism is seen as a real threat. The access to chemicals is quite easy, as well as the technology. Therefore, all our relevant authorities, in fact, must be vigilant, and they have to ensure that the necessary, in fact, measures are well in place and they are effectively implemented. From our perspective, the implementation, full and effective implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention in all member countries and worldwide would be quite a significant contribution to counter-terrorism measures, and they have to, in fact, if they are able to enforce the convention domestically, which is not, we are not yet there by all countries. There are still 80 countries which were not able to develop, for instance, their national legislation and regulations on the basis of the convention. We try to help them to do it. In any case, if they train their customs authorities, we help them to do it. If they are well equipped to implement the provisions of the convention, I think this will be an important step forward in countering the threat of terrorism, including the chemical terrorism. There is probably no way to ensure 100% that such incidents do not occur. But if the necessary measures are in place and effectively implemented, I think we have we could still live in a safer world, and that's our goal, in fact.
Okay, next question, please. No more questions. Okay, then I have another one concerning what you just said. One wonders why scientists develop chemical weapons at all, but apart from that question, there is, of course, what you just mentioned, easy access to materials, but at the same time, of course, it's a question of the proliferation of knowledge. So how do you keep scientists, and especially young scientists, from engaging in producing chemical weapons for whatever reasons?
We have seen, in fact, the first example of, misusing the science during the First World War. In fact, a German scientist, Fritz Haber, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, in fact, also developed the deadly sulfur mustard, which was used extensively during the First World War. clearly, much depends on, in fact, promoting the ethical standards in our respective countries within the scientific communities. That's why I put emphasis, and I do it in every relevant instance to the promotion of those standards worldwide. As to our field, we will do our best, in fact, to step up our efforts in education and outreach. Recently, we had a regional conference in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and with the participation of many countries in Latin America. And I'm encouraging, in fact, other states to organize such awareness-raising activities within their countries, be it at national level or regional and international ones. Therefore, awareness raising is extremely important. The relevant scientific and industrial communities and experts may not be fully aware of the risks associated with handling dual-use chemical materials, and we have to inform them adequately, and so that they take the necessary measures. In addition to that, clearly, the national relevant authorities will have to make sure that the chemical substances, dual-use substances, are not diverted, and their internal distribution is fully controlled. So these are more, in fact, policing, monitoring measures. But most essential, in my view, is that the scientific communities, especially young scientists, are adequately informed and raised.
Are there more questions from the audience? Yes, please. Gentleman, third row.
Sam Glazebrook, National Youth Science Forum. Ambassador, the quest to eradicate all chemical weapons is a highly ambitious one. Two-part question. Do you think that you will ever be able to truly eradicate all chemical weapons? And if you did, what would you see your organisation's role to be? Would it be more of a mediator to monitor the development of chemical technologies, or more of a police force to try and stop the development of new nuclear weapons?
I think, as I understood it correctly, the question was where you see the role of the OPCW more as a police force, policing the spread of chemical materials, or as a preventive force. Did I?
Yeah? Our role is clearly not policing, but what we are doing as an international organization in charge of overseeing the implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention. In fact, we can only supplement the national efforts, in fact, to prevent the production or diversion or misuse of chemistry. Therefore, we cannot, go to the member states and find out what is wrong, but rather we can provide advices, and we can, in fact, help them reinforce their internal mechanisms. In order to do that, we help train, in fact, their experts and build capacities. We develop some documents and help them to develop their legislations, regulations. But otherwise, we are a small organization, and I don't think any organization, in fact, would be capable to ensure, worldwide mechanism to prevent the misuse of chemistry or nuclear. Therefore, this is a forum and a mechanism which is supplementary to national efforts, but also a forum where several state parties, in fact, do exchange views, share best practices, and therefore the international cooperation is promoted which is extremely important. I think in today's world, without really effective, close international cooperation, the international community would not be able, in fact, to counter the new security challenges. The globalization is there, and the challenges are global too. Therefore, we have to try to counter them together in the most efficient way.
Thank you. More questions from the audience? Okay, maybe one more question to this point. With the spread of knowledge and the rise of many nations from the status of a developing nation to emerging states, do you think that you can actually fulfill your goal of ridding the world of chemical weapons within 4 to 5 years, like you said, or will you have to deal with new emerging chemical weapons powers?
From my point of view, the use of development, production, and use of chemical weapons by any country has become quite a remote likelihood. Therefore, I believe that the more risk is the production and use of chemical weapons by individuals or by terrorists, by groups of terrorists. Therefore, this is, in fact, more difficult to detect and to prevent, which I should acknowledge. And on the other hand, the consequences will be limited, but again, could be serious, grave. Therefore, every country, in fact, should be vigilant without any, distinction, and try to take the necessary measures to prevent such incidents. But if we fail to prevent, I think we should be ready also to assist each other and to counter them, to respond to them in the most effective way. So that's what we are trying to do at the moment. I think any active chemical weapons program could not go undetected because of the materials that they would need to procure, the technology still they would need to procure. When we speak about technology is accessible, clearly we are talking about small size of production. If some countries attempt to produce large stockpiles, they would clearly be detected, and this would be a violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention if they are party. But if they are not within the membership and outside the membership, still the international community would react quite strongly to such attempts, and I think necessary measures could be taken.
Do you think that the wide circulation of these horrible images from Syria have helped your cause and have helped keep up political pressure to get rid of chemical weapons?
I think it did, as it happened, unfortunately, during the Iran-Iraq war in 1987-88. For instance, in Halabja, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the then regime in Iraq who used chemical weapons, and thousands of people were killed and injured. And I meet quite regularly with the victims of, from Iraq and Iran. They are very well organized. They come to attend our conferences, and they have their exhibitions in the margins of our annual conferences. Their whole, in fact, goal is to raise awareness about the horrific consequences of the use of chemical weapons. And these activities do help our cause and reinforce, in fact, the moral ground of this objective. And as it happened, in fact, last year in Syria, once again, a very regrettable, horrific incident of the use of sarin, which caused about that, around the death of 1,500 people. This is an estimate, and many people were injured. Again, the international community, in fact, stood against such a use, and that's how, in fact, the whole process has begun. Therefore, let's hope from now on that the international community, in fact, would be fully aware of such risks and threats, and without waiting for such incidents, will take the necessary measures and will, in fact, continue to make every attempt to ensure the full universality and, in fact, again, to ensure the achievement of our goal for a world free of chemical weapons.
Please.
Hello, Director General Uzumzu. I have a question about the past. We're talking about the future. But what about the tons or thousands of tons that were dumped by the Germans in the Baltic Sea after World War II? Is the OPCW going to do anything about that? Because it's quite concerning. And actually, I saw a map of the whole world, and there were quite some arsenal buried. Can that arsenal be recovered and potentially also be destroyed?
I don't know.
I think the question was about the chemical weapons dumped in the Baltic Sea after Second World War, and if they can be recovered.
The chemical weapons dumped into Baltic Sea and elsewhere, in fact, they were dumped elsewhere in the ocean, are not within the mandate of the Chemical Weapons Convention. So this issue was addressed during negotiations in Geneva, but there was no consensus, in fact, to make it part. Still, this question is raised increasingly now by the littoral states to the Baltic Sea, but by others also. I mean, as the organization, we can only help the destruction of those weapons which are brought to the surface. From time to time, they come to the surface accidentally by the fishermen and others. And we provide our technical expertise. But otherwise, we are not tasked, in fact, to identify, detect, and help destroy those chemical weapons. To what extent they are dangerous? Clearly, when they are, found out, discovered by the civilians, one has to be very careful. Therefore, they pose from that perspective a safety issue. As, for instance, it happens to be in the case of abandoned chemical weapons in China. During the Second World War, the Japanese forces left a considerable amount of chemical weapons in China, and they are now being discovered and brought to the surface, and they were buried, and thousands of them, in fact. And we are working closely with them, in fact, for their destruction. So we verify their destruction. So, but on the coming back to dumped weapons, I think the civil society is raising awareness on this, and they should continue to do it. And if one day states parties decide that the OPCW should deal with this, of course, we'll do our utmost, in fact. But this issue is there. So since it's not within my mandate, I won't be able to comment further than that.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Great. So then I think I would like to conclude this session. I hope you have enjoyed yourself as much as I did and learned as much as I did today. And I'm sure I speak for everyone present here when I wish Ambassador Uzumcu and his organization to be successful in the future and enjoy the utmost support by the international community. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.